Hi, what is up, y'all? Welcome back to LUMA Coding. So today we are going to be starting our Web Design 101 course, with today being getting started on setting up our GitHub, Visual Studio Code, and then covering some basic HTML concepts. So let's get right into setting up our GitHub account for Visual Studio Code. So the first thing we want to do is, if you haven't already, you want to go and create yourself a Gmail account for your personal use, right? For this, we'll call it, we'll just say Arnav Job, right? Put your first and last name, and then you can put you just put something random for this, but you want to make sure that you are old. You're just old. Make something pretty old. And then for gender, you can just put whatever, right? So then once you do this, you want to make yourself a Gmail. So this can be arnavthego@gmail.com. So like this, right? If it's already taken, right, you can click on one of the available names and then create that Gmail. And then you'll want to create yourself some password. So we can... Yeah, so that is our password, right? And then, so then likely you'll have to send a verification to your phone number. So make sure to do that. It'll get sent to your phone, right? So you just type in, and then for recovery email, you can put in either your parents' email or your business Gmail or something like that. But so it'll be something like so, right? And then at this point, you will have a Google account, right? So now with this, what you'll want to do is you'll want to head to github.com, right? This is where we are going to use it. You'll see build and ship software on a single collaborative platform. You want to, You want to hit sign in and then create a free account, right? So then you'll put in your email here, right? So arnavthego@gmail.com, right? For your password. Ideally, this should be the exact same password you have for your Gmail, right? And then username could be Arnav Egoat. Oh, it needs a, then you can say that. Yeah. And then, you'll say this, receive occasional. Yeah. And then you'll get a verify box to verify your account, right? The verification should be complete, but then you want to keep this Gmail tab open because you will get an email from GitHub telling you to confirm that you've created the right account, right? So for now, maybe it's in spam, but if you don't see it, just refresh the Gmail and then Also, sorry. We typed in the wrong email address for this. So remember that if you type in the wrong email address, you can, of course, just go again and then do this process again. Okay. And then once you have this verified, you'll get an email sent to your account. Now the email should be right. So just refresh and then, it'll say GitHub launch code. You can just copy this, right? Paste it into GitHub. And then, your account is created. You're going to have to type it once again, right? So make sure you remember your password and then just save it automatically through Edge so that you can log into your GitHub whenever necessary. So at this point, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to create a new repository, right? And then you can call this LUMA HTML. Then that's what I'm going to call this, but you can call it like that. And you can say my GitHub repo for the HTML class of LUMA, right? So, and then at this point, you can make it public, right? And then initialize it with a README file, but we're not going to use it. So it'll be something like this, and then it'll show you this is what your GitHub repo will look like. So at this point, what you're going to want to do, right, is you are going to want to add a new file, right? Create a new file called index.html, right? And then in your index file, right, if you commit this changes, you just want to keep the file blank. You'll now have a HTML file initialized like so. And then at this point, what you'll want to do is you will want to download GitHub Desktop, right? So you would say GitHub Desktop download, right? And then you'll want to download this. And this is how we're actually going to get into VS Code. So once you have that downloaded, simply hit this and then open with GitHub Desktop, right? And then you'll get a link to download if you don't have it already. Once you have GitHub Desktop fully downloaded, right, you can now just hit this and hit open with GitHub Desktop. So once you open this, right, GitHub Desktop will now launch, right? So, and then it'll show you if you want to clone a repository. And then once you hit clone, it will actually create this in your computer, right? There will now be a file. So what you can do at this point, So at this point, from here, just hit open in Visual Studio Code, and you will now, so you'll see this index.html file. And at this point, we can put basically whatever we want. Yes. Yeah. So then you want to say, yes, you trust the authors. And then you can put whatever you want inside of here. So let's start with some basic HTML, right? So the first thing that you want to do is you want to have HTML tags surrounding like so, right? And then once you have these HTML tags like this, right? Inside of this, you want head, right? And body. Yeah. So then So there it is. So then this you'll want to keep as multi-line, right? And then inside of this, you'll want to just put a title, right? So title, you'll say like my awesome website, right? And then essentially what we're going to do now is we are going to create an about me page, right? So let's start by doing an H1. What an H1 is an H1 is a header, right? So for example, if you see it, so like this, right? We can put your name in this and it'll appear as a header. So H1, you can do H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6, right? They decrease in size as you go down, but each one of these is what we call headings. The next type of tag that we're going to learn is the paragraph tag, right? So something like so. So this, you could just put content, right? And in order to space between tags in the actual code, right? So for example, right now the heading and the paragraph are squished together. What you could do is you could put a BR, right? And this doesn't need an end tag. This will essentially separate, it'll line break the heading and the paragraph. So now what you can type in here is you could say, I am a 10th grader who goes to Redmond High School and lives in Redmond, Washington. So you could say something like this, right? This will be your paragraph, right? So then what you do here is you can now put a subheading. H2 is what we consider a subheading. And then inside of this, you can put, for example, my interests. And then the next type of tag that we're going to learn is the UL tag, right? So this UL is a list, right? And if you make it an OL, right? The difference between a UL and an OL is that the UL will be an unordered list, it'll just be bullet points, and an OL will have numbers on the side, right? So we can actually test this, right? So we'll start by putting some basic interests, and then I'll show you how you can actually run this code, right? So this, you can say, competitive math and programming, and then swimming, and let's just say playing Minecraft. Why not? So then at this point, what you can do is we are going to actually run this code because we actually want to see what this HTML file is actually like showing us. So the way to do this is to just go to your file explorer, right? And then in your file explorer, we'll wait for it to open up, then I'll show you. But in your, so in your file explorer, right, you want to full screen this. There will be like an ODisk folder. For me, this is where I have my GitHub stuff. So inside of repositories, you'll see, LUMA HTML, right? And you'll see this file called index. So if you can't find your repositories folder, you just want to search it up in the ODisk, but typically it'll be under your name and then repositories and then LUMA HTML. So at this point, what you can do is you right click and you say open with Microsoft Edge or whatever browser you use. And then when you open this, you'll see something that looks like this, right? It'll show you your actual like website. So there is, so we will actually remove this line break because it doesn't look the best. But what you can do, like the next tag that we'll learn is our center tag. So if we put a center tag around the heading, right? What the center tag does is it centers whatever content you put inside of it. So if we now save this, right, and then we refresh the website, you'll see that the Art of Jaw is now centered, right? And this looks much better. And then what we can do now is we can add images. So online, you can search for an image, like let's say cat, right? And then you'll go on to big images and say, and then you can take this picture. So you can copy the image link like so, and we can actually put this image into your website. So the way we do this is you can use an IMG with an SRC. And inside the SRC is where you put the link, right? So if you put it, so if you do that and then save this, you'll see that when we refresh this part of the website, it will update and there's now a huge photo of the cat. But if we don't, let's say we don't want this image to be this big, right? So what we can do is we can actually add a width attribute, right? And say that the width should not exceed 100 pixels. And if we save this, and refresh, you see our cat image is a lot smaller, just like that. And then lastly, the last thing that we'll learn before we like experiment with different tags is our link, right? So if we just put an A with an href, right? This is actually what we call a link. So we can say my awesome YouTube channel, right? And then in this href, we can put the YouTube channel link. And then when you refresh this, and then see, right here we have the image and the link, and the image is to the right. We don't want that. So what we'll do is we'll use our line break tag, our BR, save this, and then if we refresh this, it'll now be below. So then if we click on this awesome YouTube channel, right, it will redirect to that link, right? And as you can see here, we have my YouTube channel. But if we want to open this in a new tab, we can add a target attribute. So target equals to blank, like so. And then now it will open in a new tab, keeping the original website open. Like so. So this is a simple About Me page, right? And we will cover more things like italicizing and bolding, right? So we can, for example, in this paragraph, we can say, if we put a strong tag around so if we put a strong tag around 10th grader, and then we can put italicize this Redmond High School by putting an I tag. And the important thing here is just practice with all the tags and understand like how they work, right? So these are the two types, right? We can say a strong, bold, and this will italicize. So if we and the biggest thing is you need to remember to Control S this. So if we go back here and refresh, you'll see that this is now bolded, this is now italicized. So that will end our actual HTML for today. This is lesson 1. But then now if you go to GitHub for desktop, you'll see that all your changes are updated here. So what you'll want to say is you'll want to give a message, right? Luma class 1. And then you'll want to commit this. And basically, once you push this to the origin, right? If you push this to the origin, and then if we close out VS Code, right? Anytime you now hit open VS Code, right? Our changes will be reflected. So everything we had there, our website is intact. And then if we check the GitHub page and then refresh this, you can see that our changes also pull up in GitHub. So anyone can now go here and see how you like coded a new website like so. So that will end our lesson for today. Hope you enjoyed, and be sure to subscribe, like the video, and we'll see you in the next one.